Hello, this is Janet from janetsandberg.com, and you're listening to the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast, the weekly show that talks to peers and professionals who open up about their darkest moments when they felt like ending it all, why they didn't, and how they transformed their lives in order to triumph over the darkness and despair. Please remember to subscribe if you'd like to hear more inspiring stories. Hello, and welcome to the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Janet Sandberg, and today we are joined by Jeff Higgins. Welcome, Jeff. Oh, there goes my voice.
No, thanks for having me today, Janet. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be with you today and your listeners.
Awesome. Can you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself? I got to
Sure.
slow down. I'm just too excited.
That's all right. Yeah, it happens. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. I On April the 6th, 1983, in the Milford High School cafeteria, I met Shelly and we built a beautiful life together. We have three beautiful daughters who married three pretty great guys, and I have seven grandchildren. 20 years ago, we bootstrapped our own business. So I'm very proud to say I'm a bootstrap entrepreneur, a 20-year overnight success story. And our business, as well as I guess it's part of my DNA, that service to others and living with purpose. And so I've always tried to live that out. I've served on a lot of church councils, led congregations, done a lot of work with the local food pantries, and even international. Like in 2016, at the age of 50, I decided that I wanted to climb Mount Rainier. Kind of a bucket list item for a middle-aged guy, I guess. So I decided to make it more purposeful by adding to that the fact that I raised $25,000 to build a special needs school in Guatemala. And so living with purpose has always been very important to me, and to my wife, and our business purpose is the shortest purpose statement in the history of corporate America. I call it. It's two words: serve people. And so that's what we endeavor to do. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. I can't believe you know the exact date that you met your wife. That is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's every year, it's a point of celebration for me and for us. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's I don't know. It's one of those things, in high school you don't typically remember these things, but I remembered it, and it's a real blessing, because it's kind of a time to remember
Yeah.
where you came from.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love your motto, serve people. I mean, that's why we're here. That's what we're doing today on this podcast. So,
Right, right.
yeah. Well, let's get down to it. Um, now that we know a little bit about you and the highlight reel, let's look at the background reel, the B reel,
Yeah, right.
and uh and be real. Sorry, that was a terrible pun.
That's all right. I liked it, actually.
Um, yeah, I mean, the reason we're here is to share our stories about our darkest moments when we thought maybe we shouldn't be here anymore, when we, just wondered what the whole point of everything was.
Yeah.
Um, so what was going on in your life when you were having
Yeah,
those
and
thoughts?
you don't even need to have struggles in order to have those thoughts.
No.
But yeah, and I do public speaking, and I call my talk struggles and summits, and the highlight reel. Yeah, it's the summits, but it's also the struggles, right? Because I believe that my struggles are as much a part of making me who I am as my summits are, and none of us likes to go through them, right? We don't plan
Mhm.
for this stuff, but nobody says when I grow up I want to be unemployed, I want to be divorced, I want to be suicidal, right?
Mhm.
But life happens. And life has happened to me in big ways. I grew up in a kind of a broken family. My older brother and sister were from my mom's first marriage. There was five of us: Tim, my oldest brother, and Krista, my sister, and and then my mom and dad. Well, Tim was a very violent person, always into a lot of trouble, uh, constant turmoil in our house. His violent outburst would shake the windows of our house and the piece on Junedale Drive. Um, he would punch holes in the walls, get arrested. He was in and out of juvenile detention a lot. Mom was an alcoholic, a pretty heavy duty alcoholic, as long as I can remember. When I was 11 years old, mom drove her car onto the highway the wrong way
Oh,
and,
no.
and died in an accident with a semi truck. She's
Oh,
lucky she didn't kill somebody else. Um, and she was drunk at the time, if I didn't mention that. 3 years after my mom's tragic accident, as unlikely as it may seem, my brother, beer in hand, died in almost exactly the same way.
oh my goodness.
He drove his car under the back of a semi that was pulling off on the side of the highway. My sister didn't handle these events very well, and when we talk about suicide or just giving up on life, I guess, right? So my
Uh-huh.
sister was kind of there. She turned to alcohol. We were all alcoholics. I was an alcoholic. I was just a high functioning alcoholic, right? Which doesn't help the situation at all. But my sister was in and out of the hospital many times. About 10 maybe. I remember visiting her one time and I pleaded with her. I had tears in my eyes and I said, Krista, I've had to bury mom and I've had to bury Tim. Don't make me have to bury you too. She promised me she wouldn't, but she broke that promise to me. I was called to the hospital this time. There was nothing they can do. And I had to make the decision to remove life support.
Oh my
And I spent
gosh.
her last 3 days with her while she died. Now, as difficult as losing my mom and my brother and my sister to tragic circumstances were, right about, just a couple months after my sister died, the biggest storm of all hit for me. And this one about took me out. My friend, his name is Father Chris. He's a Catholic priest, and he and I were good friends. I'm not Catholic, but that's probably why we were such good friends, right? But we loved to golf. Chris loved to golf so much that he once told some fellow priests that he wanted to die in a sand trap. So we would constantly share our bourbon, our faith, and our golf on the weekends. We were together all the time. Since we met each other, we were fast friends. And one day, not long after my sister's death, we were golfing, and Chris asked me to go for a ride in my car. That ride lasted about 10 seconds. When I lost control, ended up upside down, down an embankment and upside down, where my friend Father Chris died in a sand trap.
Oh my.
These events kicked my alcoholism into high gear.
Yeah.
And and frankly, I'm lucky to be alive. I look back as I live my best life now, right?
Hmm.
And I look back and I think, how did I get here? Because I think that can help people. And I think about what is it that kept me from becoming the fourth headstone in my family.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
How old
that's
were
the struggle.
you when all of this happened?
So I was 11 when mom died. I was 14 when Chris died. Um, Krista, my sister, died when I was 50, and the accident was shortly after that. I was 51 years old.
Okay. Okay. So there was some a time gap in the
There
middle
was,
there.
there was,
Okay.
yes.
I was thinking this all happened like before you were 20 kind of a thing. And I'm like, oh my
No,
God.
right?
I mean, it's terrible no matter what the gap is, but
Yeah, yeah.
okay. Okay, good.
But I do. I kind of look at my life like that. I had a lot of difficulties and struggles early,
Yeah.
and I had kind of like the Oreo sandwich. I had that creamy middle. And then things kind of hit the fan again for me in my life.
Right. And and so was it after your the car accident? And that's when you were kind of starting to question yourself?
Oh, yeah,
Or was it just the whole time?
yeah, there were various points in time over our life, I think, when those questions pop into our heads, right? Like, what is the point of all this? What the heck? I don't matter. My life I'm not just going to live the rest of this miserable life.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely the worst time was when I was, after the accident. I mean, I'm guilty of killing my friend,
Yeah.
and it was all over the media.
Oh,
Uh, it was a big story in the newspaper, on the television. Um, I was hanging on by a thread. I was keeping myself together with anti-anxiety medicine, sleeping pills, and alcohol. Um, but yeah, that always is. This is the stuff that happens to somebody else. You never
yeah.
something like this, right? And yet here it was. It was me, and I was having to deal with it. You asked about my lowest point when I was in jail, and on December the 9th, 2017, when I was in jail, I was at my lowest point, and I highlighted in my jail Bible. I got a jail Bible. It's the one I had in jail, and I highlighted this from the book of Job. Right, Job suffered a lot, and I thought, well, I get to Job, maybe that'll be an encouragement to me. But instead, it just gave voice to my anguish, and I think that people can relate to this when you're in that place, right? That sometimes the Bible just doesn't give us answers for our difficulties, but it also gives voice to our anguish. And I won't get
Mhm.
all biblical on you, but it says, why does God bother giving light to the miserable? Why bother keeping bitter people alive, those who want in the worst way to die and can't, who can't imagine anything better than death, who count the day of their death and burial as the happiest day of their life? What is the point of life when it doesn't make any sense, when God blocks all the roads to meaning? I read that.
Wow.
I read that not to get preachy on anybody, just because I think that it is just such a poignant verse about how we can get and how low we can get. And it gives me, I guess, some sense that there's others, Joe,
Mhm.
and I think that there's others out there too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is just such a concise description of what it feels like,
Yeah,
and
right,
what the thoughts are that are going through our head.
right,
And what's amazing is that that book was written thousands of years ago. Like,
right.
this is not a new thing. I think there's, because of the state of the world, there's probably more mental health issues now. A lot more people are struggling now than used to, but that's just proof that as humans, we've been struggling with suicidal ideation for thousands of years, for probably
Time.
as long as there have been humans in the world.
Yes, yes. But when I
And
was at that point, I was praying for God to take me.
yeah,
I felt like Humpty Dumpty, Janet. I was broken and I couldn't be put back together, and my life was worthless. That's
yeah,
that's where I was.
yeah, yeah, I understand those feelings. But obviously you're here and you're thriving. And so what changed? What happened?
You know, a lot of things, and that's what I talk to you, because you're right. People are suffering, right? I see the news. A lot of you are suffering from depression, anxiety, stress, uh, PTSD, and panic attacks, even. And
Mhm.
I've experienced all of that. And I that's why I hope that what I've learned along the way can be helpful for other people. I think pertinent to this podcast is suicide. And I would just say this isn't something I typically talk about a whole lot, um, but when I think about those days when I thought about ending it all, when I thought that I just would be better off not here, there were a couple of thoughts that kept me um, grounded here in this place. And one of those was that it would not be good for those that are around me to pile tragedy on top of more tragedy. That
Mm,
what I was going through now would be compounded for them, and I
right.
would just be checked out. I wouldn't be here to see it or suffer the consequences of that. And that thought scared me. That thought, I guess, my family and everybody had been through enough already.
Yeah.
And to pile that on them, I thought would be very selfish of me. And that was a thought that went through my head. Another thought was that this is based on my faith again, but it's that my life is a gift. My life is a gift that I have no right to return. Can you imagine
Mhm.
somebody returning a Christmas gift without even, unwrapping it? That would be a slap in the face to my God, and I didn't think that was something that I wanted to do. And another thing that kept me going is frankly having a sense of purpose still in my life. As much as I say I was broken in a million pieces and I didn't think I could serve anybody worthwhile anymore in my life, at the same time, I still had a sense of purpose that God has given me um, a lot to deal with. And that this could, serve a purpose for folks. And fortunately, those thoughts kept me going and just kept me putting one step in front of the other. It's like climbing that mountain when you just feel like you can't go any further, right?
Mhm.
I had a purpose. My purpose was bigger than some middle-aged guy climbing 14,000 feet to the top of a mountain. This
Right.
is about building that school in Guatemala and all the people who had donated and supported me. And when you have purpose on your side, you don't give up easy. So
Mhm.
those were some of the things. But what got me, I guess, back from the edge to living a life that is really the best life that I've had. And partly it's because of my struggles, but there's a lot of things. Why? I think people ask the question why a lot. And what
Mhm.
I tell people, I say, that can be destructive. I said, asking why, pain asks why when there are no answers.
Yep.
Healing asks what's next.
Right.
Because, we're not going to have answers to all these big questions. And we can drive ourselves crazy for the rest of our lives trying to
Mhm.
figure them out to no avail. It
Yeah.
won't do me any good to know why Chris died and I didn't. I'm sitting a foot from him. I end up walking away with barely a scratch, but he dies. Why him? Why not me? Um, these things can disturb our peace of mind and keep us from living a fulfilled life, I believe. Another thing that really helped me out, I think, was uh, uh, being able to, um, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on my thought process is not
Mhm.
working here
It's
well
okay.
enough. But yeah, so moving from why to what's next, I think that forgiveness and reconciliation I have found to be the path to peace. We talk a lot about peace in the world and having peace of mind and peace in our lives and for me, I knew um, back there in jail that if I was ever going to have a meaningful, productive life again, that I was going to have to practice some serious forgiveness.
Mhm.
That was a big mountain to climb for me, right? I mean, I had to forgive myself first.
Right. Which is always the hardest one.
It is, and but forgiveness is so important to us to be productive, useful human beings. And I'm not sure that people understand. And I tell them this story. There's this guy, his name was Gary. And Gary was a friend of Chris's. He was a former bailiff. He had access to the courthouse and he made it his life to make sure that or his mission to make sure that I got persecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Mm.
Gary talked to the prosecutor. He talked to the press. He talked to Chris's family, and he stirred up a lot of bitterness. Gary is probably the single reason that I spent time at the Hamilton County Justice Center in jail. Now, a couple of years after this whole incident, Gary reached out to me and he sent me a letter. And in his letter, he said, I think that forgiveness is a great gift that we can give to each other. And he got in touch with me and he wanted to ask for my forgiveness. And he wanted me to know that he did not have ill feelings towards me. He wanted to reconcile. I had already decided that reconciliation was going to have to be a part of my life. And so I was glad to give him that. What I didn't know at the time, though, was Gary was dying.
Ah.
Gary had a terminal illness, and Gary wanted to die in peace.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think we all do, right?
Yeah.
And we hear these stories a lot about people who know that their time is short and they want to reconcile and they want to have forgiveness. And they want to get that straightened out before they die. Um, I want to live in peace.
Yeah. Don't
I
wait till the last minute to get
don't
everything
wait.
sorted.
Yeah, exactly. And if we want to live in peace in our lives, I really feel like it kind of starts with forgiveness and reconciliation. Ourselves, our family, our parents, and everybody else. That guy that just cut me off in traffic, I practice radical forgiveness, and it brings me great peace. If somebody does something, I'm in the forgiveness mode. If something offends me or what have you, and I just find it to be a great tool for maintaining mental health and well-being.
It is. It is just like you have a meditation practice. A
Right?
lot of people do,
Yeah.
or an exercise practice, or whatever it is that helps you. Having a forgiveness practice um,
Yeah.
is really good. And when I was going through my divorce and trying to forgive myself and my ex, and all the people, all the things that are involved in that situation, I also had a forgiveness practice. And I used a Hawaiian prayer. It's called Ho'oponopono.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's really, really simple. It's just you think about who you want to forgive, yourself or someone else, and you just say, I'm sorry, please forgive me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love you.
Right.
And it's really
And you just
simple. It's straight to the
say
point,
it
but it
once.
is so difficult.
It is. It is. And my brain to forgiveness is not, I have to go to that person, I have to talk to them, I have to, I just need to do it in my heart. Like I'm not going to be able to,
Exactly.
give forgiveness to my mother or my brother or my sister or my family for everything that's happened.
Well,
But
forgiveness isn't about them. Forgiveness is about us.
right,
It's
exactly.
for our peace. Has
Yeah.
nothing to do with them.
Yeah. And you bring up an excellent point, Janet. I've not arrived. I don't think any of us arrive at this point, right? Where we have perfect mental health and well being and we just cruise, right?
Mhm.
It's a daily practice, it's something you work on every day. I find myself slipping, or having those days, and I have to grab myself. I have to say, what's going on here? Maybe it's forgiveness. Maybe it's, any number of things. Maybe I'm not grabbing my thoughts and controlling them, and I'm letting them run away with me. But this is a daily thing. This is something that you work on constantly, and it's worth it. But it is not something you rest on your laurels, because it can jump back up and bite you at any time.
Mhm. Well, it's like, you take the medicine, and then like the old antibiotic struggle. You're sick, so you take antibiotics, and then
Right.
you're supposed to take them for 10 days, but after 2 you feel fine.
Right.
So you stop
So
taking
you
them, but
stop
then you
taking
just
them.
get more sick the next time,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then the antibiotics don't work as well.
Yeah.
So, you just,
That's a
so
great
it's the same
analogy.
thing, keeping or brushing your teeth or whatever. As long as you do it every day and you
Right.
start to wonder, why bother? Because my teeth are great.
Hmm.
If you
Yep.
stop, then you have problems. So
Yeah.
it's
Mental
it's
health and
that
well-being.
daily
Yeah,
practice
it
that
is,
keeps
right?
us healthy,
Yeah.
so that we don't see that we're struggling anymore is because of the practice. So if you stop, then
Yep.
obviously things get worse. But
Yeah.
it's our brains don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Sometimes we have to uh I don't know, take over because our brains will naturally, as humans, right? Our brains
Mhm.
will tend to go places that are not healthy.
Yes.
And you need to be real careful about that. Everybody does, right? And I talk a lot about our thoughts and our thought process because I what I do, I use an analogy like a highway, right? Your thoughts are like a highway that you own, and you get to decide which cars get on it. But only so many cars can get on that highway. So which cars are you going to let on?
Hmm.
And I encourage people kindly show those negative thoughts the exit ramp and replace them with good cars. Make sure that your traffic is flowing and that it's flowing with good cars and you're in control of that. And it's real important. I had a guy in jail. His name was Daniel. Daniel was a drug addict, heroin addict. He got kicked out of his house when he was young. His father never told him a positive thing about himself in his life. And I was talking to Daniel, and I got the strong sense of this. And I said, Daniel, I said, your dad's wrong. I said, you are a good person. You are a worthwhile person. I'm a Daniel fan, and I'm
Hmm.
here cheering you on. And when you get out of here, you're going to beat that addiction. And I was telling him things about himself that he had never heard before. And one day, Daniel looks at me and he says, I said, your father's wrong about this. I said, you don't believe what he's telling you. And he says, looks me straight in the eye and he says, I wish you were my father.
Oh,
And it just kind of illustrates how important a kind word or a good word is for people, right?
yeah.
We can give that to ourselves. And if we are not careful, just the negative ones will take over. So, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Controlling our thoughts and our thought process, taking a hold of them is so important. And I find that when I'm in my deepest depths, the negative thoughts are flowing,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And that's the hardest time because the winds are blowing and the rain's pouring hard, and it seems like it's just coming in sideways, and you really got to work at it to fight against that stuff.
Yes. And you mentioned before about asking why. And if you're in the point where you're asking why, then that's already an indicator
Right.
that
That's true.
things are not going well.
Yeah.
And my therapist said the same thing the other day, sort of, and he was like, if you're asking, am I happy? Then you're only asking that when you're not happy.
Yeah.
Because if you're happy, you're too busy living life to
Yeah.
even care if you're happy or not.
Right.
So
This is
you only start asking these questions when you're not in those places.
right. Right.
So if you're not even recognizing, sometimes it's hard to recognize when we're slipping and when we're
It is.
heading on that downward slope. But if we catch ourselves asking the questions, then we
Yeah.
can be like, okay,
Indicators, right?
this is the indicator that I am
So,
not in a good place. So
and there
what
are
can I do
indicators. Yeah,
to,
you're absolutely right. There's indicators like that say, hey, and those are for me, right? Those are flashing lights. And I'm like, wait a minute, and that's not right.
Mhm.
That's not who I want to be and how I want to be. And so that's the time when you really have to be proactive about taking control of your thought process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Figure for yourself, ask what's next.
So another
And
big thing for me was I needed to decide,
mhm.
and I think this is true for everybody. You need to decide where you want to be. And that might sound silly. I want to be happy. Yeah, but you know what? I don't believe that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. I believe that it's a choice. I believe that our difficulties can be stumbling blocks or they can be stepping stones, but it's not mandatory. It is not compulsory. You have to make that decision. Struggles and difficulties can make us bitter or they can make us better.
Mhm.
The choice is ours, though. It's up to us. We have to decide that. Now, my sister, you could say she ended up dead instead of better because of her struggles. But
Mhm.
she lived a miserable life in the meantime. I
Right.
can point out 1,300 people at the Hamilton County Justice Center who have had difficult lives, and most of them are living bitter because of it.
Yes.
And it comes down to each of our personal choice and decision. You have to make a decision. I had to make a decision. Am I going to just cash it in, or am I really going to go forward? Because living in between wasn't an option for me. I didn't want to be in purgatory. I think that's worse than being either or. For
Oh,
me,
for sure.
yeah, for me, it's either, I'd rather either be miserable or be happy, but living in that in between zone isn't a place to be. And so I decided that, if I was going to be bitter, or if I was going to be better, and I made the decision that I would move forward. I'm glad I did because, I'm living my best life after wanting to end it.
Amazing. Um, I would like to ask you about whether or not you are sober now.
Ah, yes, I am. I am.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was a couple.
How?
Yeah, so this is a story in itself. I've got lots of stories. Uh, so yeah, alcoholism ran heavy in my family.
Mhm.
I had three headstones staring me in the face.
Yep.
All died from alcoholism, and I still drank. If you think that you can't understand why the alcoholic does, what the alcoholic does, neither does the alcoholic. It doesn't
Right.
make sense, right?
Yeah.
This is not something that makes a lot of sense. And so when my mom died when I was 11 years old, uh, my father became good friends with the funeral director, and I ended up becoming good friends with his son. And he was even best man at my wedding. We lost touch for many years, and then after the accident, the older brother of the guy that was the best man at my wedding reached out to me. He had seen the newspaper articles and that we became friends. I knew he was in AA, but at the time that didn't really matter to me.
Right.
So when I finally reached that point where, it's a progression. Alcoholism never gets better, it always progresses in the wrong direction. Uh, but when I finally got to that point where I knew that I needed to do something or I was going to end up like the rest of my family, my wife said to me, she said, so is there somebody you want me to call? And I said, yes, call Don, the guy who's lost touch with for many years. And Don came over and we talked, and he said, you want to go to a meeting? And I was like, sure. Yeah, let's go to a meeting. And that was the last day I drank, July the 8th, 2020. Right in the middle of a pandemic, I decided to get sober. It wasn't too brilliant of me, but in many ways, the death of my mother from alcoholism when I was 11 years old led to me getting sober. So,
Yeah.
but I'm yes, very happily, over almost 3.5 years sober.
Well done. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Before you get sober, you never can imagine that you can live a happy life without alcohol. Uh, I got the shakes just thinking about living without alcohol. Uh, but it's true. As I sit here today, I'm very happy being sober, and I never thought that that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are an inspiration in so many ways. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story with us. Um, do you have any last words of wisdom for our audience?
Yeah, because based on the topic of this, I just want to say this. August 11th, 2016, 7:15 in the morning, I summited Mount Rainier, 14,410 feet, the hardest physical accomplishment of my life. Within a year, I was lower and more broken than I could ever imagine. My sister had died. I had my car accident, and I was, yeah, I didn't think that you could get that low. Um, yeah, depression, anxiety, medication, all of that. 6 years later, August 11th, 2022, The 6th year anniversary was also a Thursday of me summiting Mount Rainier, was the day I ended up getting my driver's license back. The days in between had been the hardest climb of my life. And, I would just like to encourage people. It's like climbing that mountain. When you're going through it, nothing people say can really help a lot.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just got to concentrate on putting one step in front of the other. Just keep moving forward and you will get there. I believe that we were made to overcome life's greatest challenges, and I want others to believe that too.
Thank you. That is beautiful. And what a great visual. So, thank you so much for being here. Um, and I look forward to hearing more of your story, following along.
Thank you, Janet. It's been great being here with you today.
Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.